Working on a 2016 Hyundai Tucson with a 1.6 liter turbo, and what we've got is a cylinder 3 misfire. Simply read the codes on the dash, started the motor, runs real rough, but it will move under its own power. So where I'm at right now, I went ahead and pulled the ignition coils and the spark plugs just to do some initial diagnostic, which is what I want to cover in this video, is simply diagnosing where it is we need to go to replace or repair, as opposed to just swapping out coils and plugs and things like that and wasting money. So this is cylinders 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here's each individual plug. I do not know if these are original to the car. I assume that they are. Cylinder 3 is super wet. And there's a little bit of oil on cylinder 4s. And if we go into the cylinders, if we can get anything in here, well, maybe not so much, but what I was finding was cylinder 3 had more moisture on the piston head. So to get these ignition coil boots out, they're pretty simple. This one over here, number 4, you've got to disconnect this air hose, disconnect the fuel rail, high pressure fuel pump fitting, and then the other connector as well. It's kind of a pain, but you just have to take that out of the way. When it was running, I did notice it smelled like a lot of exhaust and fuel. So I don't want to necessarily say it's a fuel injector or not, but that was just one of the things that I noticed as I was driving it through, and it's got some smoke out the back. So what I'm going to do first is just run a simple compression test on all the cylinders and see if anything pops out of this. Alright, this is cylinder 1. We'll just go in a row and see what we find. $180. Cylinder 2. $180. This is cylinder 3, the one the computer told us had a problem. Well, that didn't sound good. And that doesn't look good. So there's 0 compression on cylinder 3. Let's do cylinder 4 just to make sure there's nothing else to worry about. $180. Okay, that's good news. I did want to point out real quick, in case you're wanting to do this, these spark plugs are actually skinnier than most. They're actually a 12 mil thread. 14 I think is pretty standard. So, but if you don't have your calipers, you can just take a 12 mil wrench, or 13 or 14 or whatever size you need, just to give you a quick measurement of what size threads you need. So I had to go buy a different set that had this in it, because the standard size on here I think is a 14, so I had to just get the adapter to screw on there. Just a little tip for you. Alright, now what we're going to work on is doing a leak down test. So we've got shop air hooked up to our leak down tester. We've got that 12 mil put on into my leak down hose, and then on the crank bolt there's a 22 mil with a 1/2 inch drive ratchet on it, and then I've got my 3/8 drive extensions connected together so I could watch the travel of this going up and down. So what I'm going to do right now, it's at the top of one of the strokes, I don't know which one it is, so I'm going to rotate the motor clockwise say that. Come on. Stand by. Okay, just kidding. Freaked myself out. So the 3/8 drive extensions were too thick to fit down in the hole, so now I've got a 1/4 drive extensions to fit down in there. Now we should be able to move the crank and the pistons move. So what I'm looking for is for it to go back down, and then when it starts to go back down, then I'll put my compression tester on it, leak down tester on it, and look for any sort of air coming back up. Alright, so I'm at the bottom, I'm going to swap it over. Okay, so as I'm cranking it, depending on what stroke it's at, we should get some level of so it's moving. This one doesn't have the Schrader valve in it, may swap out the hose. Okay, so this one's giving me some resistance, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and put in the extension rods in here so that we can watch it come up to the top. Okay, got those in there. Just going to give it some cranks and watch for it to come up, but then basically come to a stop. Okay, right there. Alright, so I've got my hose hooked up to cylinder 1. We're at top dead center compression stroke, and there's where we sit as far as leakage is concerned. So we could go around and try to listen for where that's coming out at. You know, you want to listen to your dipstick hole, you'll get past the rings. You want to listen to alternating cylinders and feel for air. And then, you know, you take a throttle body. Don't you hate when your shop air kicks on? Okay, so I went around, I didn't really hear anything outside of the norm. Something else you want to check, of course, is your coolant reservoir to make sure that that's not gurgling, because if it is, you got a head gasket problem. So the firing order is 1, 3, 4, 2 on this car. So cylinder 3 on the next turn up should be on its compression stroke. So we'll just crank it up and get it to top dead center, and then we'll check it. Alright, so I've got it connected to cylinder 3. Before I connect shop air to it, while we're doing this one, so we know this is a dead cylinder, there's no compression, so the air is leaking out of somewhere. It's either internal, intake or exhaust, or both. And from this point, we're really going to try to focus in on where we hear air coming out of. I do not have the throttle body disconnected right now, so I'll probably just open the air box real quick so I can listen to there. And then back at the exhaust out the back of the car, we'll see if we can hear a lot of air coming through there. And if we hear air in one place and not the other, it gives us a good indication of where we need to go with it. Got to be quick because this is 100% leakage. This will be where the throttle body through the inbox. I don't hear much. Let's go to the exhaust real quick. Can we hear anything? And it's not as much that I can hear it, which I can, but I can smell it being pushed out of here. There's nothing bubbling in there, which is good. I don't hear anything from here. I feel a little bit, but it's going to get past the piston rings a little bit. Check the cylinders next to it. I am thinking that there's a busted exhaust valve. So, well, I feel like I'm going to have to pull the head and verify that in fact there's probably a cracked exhaust valve or two. I don't really know any other way to do it, so I'll have to follow up on the diagnosis. But if I just would have replaced the spark plugs and the ignition coil, I'd have the exact same fault that I have right now. So this is why we diagnose things, so we can figure out what the actual trouble is and fix that. So it'll be a little while for me to get parts and things, and then we'll finish up the video. Thanks. Alright, I'm going to give you a quick update while we got this going. So cylinder 3 is a problem. Let's see if we can see how gunky that is compared to next cylinder. And then 4's got a little bit on the left side, but I'm going to look at the top side. So this would be cylinder 3 right here. The camshafts both look good. And there's the lobes. So let's just turn it real quick as it's coming across. Let's see, right here, watch those lobes. They're pushing down, sliding through. And then the intake side, I can't really see those, but so everything is rotating just fine. So outside of a piston crack that I couldn't see, I have to assume still that the exhaust valves are the problem. So we'll find out. Okay, so heads off. This is the bottom side. It's where the pistons come in contact, and this is cylinder 3, and this is the exhaust side. And you can see it's got a big fat hole in the exhaust valve. So I was right on that one, which is a good thing I ordered the parts. They'll be here soon. So I want to make sure you guys got to see what that looks like when it happens with no compression. But there was no piston noise or piston rod noise at all. That's the, let's see if we can see. Put the flashlight down through the broken part of the valve. So here's the number 3 cylinder piston, and I mean, it looks pretty good. So those bits that broke off went through the exhaust somewhere down there, and probably maybe a little bit hopefully not in the turbo, but down in the catalytic converter there's probably some crusties down in there. But that's it. I'm gonna put it back together, and so I assume she's gonna run just fine. I guess we'll find out. Hope to help you out. So as a follow-up to the repair, the thing is running and it's good to go. So hope that video line helped you out, and subscribe if you don't mind. Thanks.